My name's Quinn Dooley, and I'm an actor-musician with Garner Theatre Productions.
I play a wide array of stringed instruments like the uke, the mandolin, the banjo, the guitar, but my main one is the violin.
And welcome to Violin A to Z, coffee needed. A is for, all right, so you want to play the violin. Yay! It's very exciting. B is for the bow and the body. There's two different parts to a violin. You got the bow and you've got the actual violin. The violin is a treble instrument, so it plays in treble clef. It is in fifths, starting with the lowest string is G, and then a D, then an A, and then an E. A quick fire trip around the violin. This is the body.
We've got the chin rest, we have the tailpiece and fine tuners, a bridge which attaches to my LR Baggs pickup.
The fingerboard, the strings, the main tuning pegs, the scroll, the F-holes, and on the back, some people like to play with a shoulder rest. I have a very long, model-esque neck, and I like to play with a shoulder rest. The bow is a long piece of wood, and on the other side, very, very tightly stretched horsehair. I like to imagine that my bow's horsehair came from this horse. Google search the most beautiful horse in the world. There's also three parts to the bow. There is the tip, which is from about here to here. There's the middle, which is from about here to here. And then there's down here. This area is called the frog. Your bow also tightens and loosens. So this little knob back here will loosen your bow and all the hair on your bow will get very loose. And then it will also tighten. My favorite trick for knowing how tight your bow should be is the pencil trick. My teacher taught it to me when I was very, very young. Take your bow like this and you can stick a pencil through it. But if the pencil is not touching the wood and the hair at the same time, then your bow is too tight. And that can cause problems like a bouncing bow on the string. Same thing for a bow being too loose. It can drag across the string and you can hear the wood. C is for correct bow hold and correct violin hold. Starting with the violin, put it in your left hand and you flip it and put it on your left shoulder with the chin rest against your left cheek. You can either hold the violin up here if you're using your fingers, or if you're just learning, you can hold it down here. The bow's a little bit trickier. The bow hold is very specific for a violin.
You cannot hold it like this, or like this, or like this.
The correct bow hold is actually like this. Take your right hand, take your thumb, and put it in between this hole. Then take your index finger and lay it down against the metal. Take your second finger and connect it to your thumb. Take your third finger, make sure it's looking out that little hole, I call it the porthole, and then take your pinky and very, very daintily place it on top. When your bow hits your string, you should really be able to lift up off that pinky. I'm only speaking on behalf of the way I learned to play the violin. I know that a lot of fiddlers hold their bows higher up, and I can definitely see why. It just offers you a bit more control, and it's very traditional. Correct bow hold placement, you got. Correct violin placement, you got. And now the most important key part is making a sound. You will always be playing between the fingerboard and the bridge. This is your little sweet spot. Over here, sounds like death. And up here, you can use sometimes, but not too far up, just to create dynamics.
The goal is to keep your bow going straight, right in the center of that sweet spot, and it'll be parallel to your bridge and the edge of your fingerboard. That creates a nice clean sound.
D. D stands for two things. D stands for first direction. There's two directions your bow can go. It can go down, which is from the frog to the tip, or it can go up, which is from the tip to the frog. D also stands for don't be afraid to make noise. Sometimes the hardest part about learning to play the violin is realizing that it's probably gonna sound bad for a while. And I find that people kind of get a little nervous about it and don't want to play out. But the most important thing you can do when playing the violin is just to play strong. And if you're wrong, it's wrong. And if it scratches, then it scratches. But you're still playing an instrument, which is awesome. E is for ease into it. You don't have to start playing everything at the same time. You don't have to start immediately learning where your fingers go. If anything, it's harder. You just have to be confident making a sound on a down bow and an up bow, and maybe even dragging your bow across all 4 strings like this. Is for frets. You don't have them, which means you are superior. All jokes aside though, it's very hard to learn to play the guitar. This is one of the hardest parts about playing an orchestral string instrument, and when you start to play, you usually don't start to play without 4 markers on your violin. These markers will go across the fingerboard here, 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 and here. Roughly. One of the most important things in playing the violin is intonation. If your finger is even like a 0.5 millimeter off from where it's supposed to be, the violin won't sound in tune. Most of the time you spend learning to play the violin is training your ear to recognize even those micro differences. G is for go slowly. My teacher used to tell me that playing through is not practicing. It's always better to start slow and then work your way up. That way you know you're playing every note correctly and cleanly, and it's gonna sound bomb. Have something specific you want to work on. Sometimes it's really hard to just jump into playing the violin. Get a book that you want to work through. The RCM ones are amazing. Or a book of studies, scales, a book of easy tunes or exercises, and try to work through them slowly one by one. It makes playing feel like you're accomplishing something rather than just being like, ugh, I want to play. I is for imagine that you are a virtuoso. Posture is very important in violin. We really don't want saggy violins down here or like violins way up here. Violin, your scroll should be directly across from you with a nice bend in your elbow, a very soft bend in your wrist, standing up straight and ready to rock. J is for just the elbow down. When you're bowing, you should never ever be moving your shoulder.
Makes it really hard to control your bow and keep it within that sweet spot.
K is for key signatures. Sometimes a great key is D. Sometimes a great key is A. Sometimes a great key is G. Sometimes a great key is C. Every so often, F is a good key. Every so often, B flat is a good key. Anything over 4 sharps or over 4 flats is gonna feel like you're wearing your pants backwards. They're just funky keys for the violin, and they go against what your hand has learned. That being said, they're possible to play, and those keys, really good training for your ear. And also, most of them sound really dope. They're jazz keys. That's jazz, babies. L is for long bows versus short bows. It's also the difference between legato and staccato. Mastering long bows and short bows is very key because a lot of the time you'll be playing music where they will ask you to play some really fast 16th notes, for example. You couldn't play these kind of things with a long bow because they sound just awful. So playing these things with a short bow is very key.
Tune in next week for more fun learning the violin.